Now, Ron DeSantis brings up this issue of consolidation and monopoly power, talking about a tussle this week between Elon Musk and Tim Cook, because Tim Cook says, we're going to, if Elon Musk's free speech stuff goes this way, maybe they don't belong on Apple's App Store. Well, that's a huge monopoly power that Google and Apple sort of both have. But it relates in the same sense that as DeSantis gets in, Apple right now has people fleeing a Foxconn factory in China because of the zero COVID policy and how horrible it is to workers. And meanwhile, Tim Cook's going to be like, oh, Elon Musk, he sort of wants to bring back these different speech boundaries on Twitter. Maybe we'll take you off the App Store.
Although, which apparently was made up.
Yeah, right. We did
it didn't actually happen.
Right,
But let's pretend that it happened because we all pretended it was happening, and Ron DeSantis responded to it. And I think this clip from Ron DeSantis is a great example of the way that our politics has moved away from the actual and into the cultural. Let's play this.
When you also hear reports that Apple is threatening to remove Twitter from the App Store because Elon Musk is actually opening it up for free speech and is restoring a lot of accounts that were unfairly and illegitimately suspended for putting out accurate information about COVID. That's like one of the main things that's being reinstated. So many things these experts were wrong at, and you had people on Twitter that were calling that out, and Twitter, the old regime in Twitter, their response was to try to just suffocate the dissent. And Elon Musk knows that's not a winning formula, and so he's providing free speech. And so if Apple responds to that, by nuking them from the App Store, I think that would be a huge mistake, and it would be a really raw exercise of monopolistic power that I think would merit a response from the United States Congress.
Whoa, would it merit a response from the United States Congress? Are you kidding me? There is a bipartisan bill in Congress that cracks down on exactly the thing that he's talking about that Apple is doing. Ron DeSantis has not endorsed this bill. It's not even clear that he's even aware of it. It's a huge deal. Chuck Schumer was protested on Thursday night because Schumer is refusing to bring it to a floor vote. He was protested at a fundraiser on Wednesday night.
Schumer's daughters work for Facebook and Microsoft?
Amazon, I think.
Amazon, okay.
And I don't know if you saw it this week, there was a group that's pushing for Schumer to put this on the floor, we don't have it here, but they put out a deep fake with Mark Zuckerberg. Did you see this?
Yeah, I did see it.
It's kind of disturbing. At the end, he says, thank you for helping me and all my friends. And I was like, oh, that's not him. Doesn't have friends. Doesn't have friends. So there's all this pressure being put on Schumer to put this on the floor, because if it goes on the floor, and we've talked about this on the show a bunch, if it gets to the floor, in the light of day, it's going to be hard for senators to vote against it.
It is hard for Republicans to vote against it, and it is hard for Democrats to vote against it.
And so Ron DeSantis could be putting pressure on Chuck Schumer to put that on the floor, because there's an actual thing that could happen to address the thing that he claims he's upset about. But instead, he just wants to have a press conference and make a cultural grievance point. Well, if you take Twitter off the App Store, sure be cool if Congress did something about that. It's like, wow, you're so close. You're so close. Apple does indeed have too much power. The fact that they can take people on and off the App Store with no check, that they can walk away with 30% of the revenue, is absurd. Congress should do something about it.
Well, and that's one of the things here is DeSantis is the least of my worries when it comes to this particular bill, because obviously he can't vote on it. He has nothing really to do with it. But there are Republicans, I think that Republicans who would love to talk a really big game about big tech and who understand all of the problems with the fact that Apple and Google wield this much power over the app stores. And one really interesting thing Tristan Harris told me on my podcast over at Federalist Radio a couple months ago, he's from the Center for Humane Tech, is basically that Apple has so much monopoly power at this point, they could refuse to have apps on their app store that are intentionally addictive beyond reasonable boundaries, right? They could turn that off with a switch. But all our politics is talking about is culture war stuff, right? We're mired in this conversation. It's not to say that the monopoly power isn't important, because the consolidation has allowed them to do all of this different stuff. But it's we can see the forest for the trees, and our politics is operating right now. It's actually kind of meta, no pun intended. It's kind of meta, right? That the reason we can't have productive policy conversations about this stuff is because what these apps are doing to our political discourse, period.
And because our political system doesn't allow democratic participation to result in actual things being done, then you wind up just lobbying Disney to do something, or you beg Apple to do something, or you buy Twitter.
Well, and it's the same thing with Disney buying up all of these different places, right? Like Disney, ABC, so that means ESPN, that means Hulu. They have huge stakes, controlling stakes in all of these different places. And that means the same way that you see Facebook snatching up Instagram and snatching up all of these different things as well, what you have is then a very small, a much smaller group of people is in charge of way more of our political discourse. And so what they think is going to be the boundaries in a way that, what Bob Iger thinks is, quote, being a good citizen, what Bob Iger thinks is politics, then becomes way more powerful than if Bob Iger is just overseeing theme parks and a film studio. It has way bigger implications because then it trickles down into ESPN, it trickles down into ABC, Good Morning America, Hulu, like all of those things are going to be downstream of what the C-suite over at Disney thinks. And Stoller makes this point a lot too. That is, from a conservative perspective, what that has done to our politics has been, from my perspective, horrific.
Right, and the wave of consolidation that Disney was a huge part of is the thing that has created this congressional pushback, which I wonder, and I'm curious if you're taking this, I wonder if the kind of tech stock crash has taken a lot of the gas out of it. Like, Facebook doesn't seem like the behemoth and the monster anymore in the eyes of some in the public, I would imagine, where several years ago when you're starting the drafting of this bill. Now they still own WhatsApp. They still they're still an absolute behemoth.
Yep.
And I don't think the regulation, the antitrust enforcement is any less relevant. But I wonder if kind of publicly, politically, the collapse has led people to say, well, I guess Facebook took care of itself. Zuckerberg broke up Facebook.
I mean, their mergers have already happened, and there's no real...
You could unwind them.
But there's been no real movement on that front. That's the thing I was going to say. Like, so their mergers have happened, and yeah, a lot of people like Elizabeth Warren or I don't know, some Republicans will say like, break up Facebook. But in terms of like that actually happening and retroactively, sort of, that's one of the things where I
probably
haven't
better off. Like the companies themselves, WhatsApp, Instagram, like they probably. It feels like being under that one giant Meta umbrella.
Agree.
Has left them to wither.
I agree completely. I mean, it gives them a lot more room in their books to sort of experiment. And Meta, for instance, with its Oculus, like has taken a hit recently, although I'm not as convinced that that's permanent as a lot of folks are. I think that its technology is much more powerful than some people realize, and there's already conversation, actually. Just this week I was reading a story about how they're already working with different workplays to see how they can integrate. Are we going to have an Oculus
show eventually? Is that how that's going to work?
I mean, you can watch us on the YouTube app on Oculus, but we won't be like all around you. We would have to film with the 360 camera to do that. But there are already divisions over at Meta working to like integrate this into people's work lives, which is one of the things that should be stopped immediately. All that is to say, they are, I think, what Iger doesn't get, but what he's flirting with, in the same way you're saying, like Republicans are so close to being there in antitrust. Woke corporatists, you're so close to being there. Like your business is not helped by making these sort of like genuflections that are obviously insincere in so many cases. That is not helpful to your business. People just want to, watch the NFL to watch the NFL. You can still be a good steward of your community and of the country and socially responsible without shoving it down people's throats. But because some people were convinced at the tippy top that they had to do that. And I think had there been more competition in that space in the last 5 years, I actually think a lot of this stuff, a lot of the kind of cultural strife would have been worked out in the marketplace, but consumers don't have that power. They don't have the power to vote with their wallets right now because what, you're going to boycott Disney? Right. Good luck. Good luck.
Right, and there was this moment where Elon Musk tried to marshal that energy. Remember, he said he was going to name and shame all the corporations that were pulling their audience away. It's like, I'm not so sure that's going to work. Like the right-wing audience on Twitter is probably a little bit older. Like it's not the demo that these that these corporations are going for. They're not going to be browbeaten into actually making ads. It was funny because I'd never seen that before. All the protests in the past had always been pressuring companies not to advertise, not to spend their money on X, Y, or Z. This one was do spend your money on this.
And speaking of Elon, we should say before we run that he actually met with Tim Cook this week after these reports surfaced, the ones that DeSantis was responding to.
They surfaced from Elon Musk.
Yes, exactly. He said, among other things, Musk said, we resolved the misunderstanding about Twitter potentially being removed from the App Store. So all of this sort of came up to the surface on Twitter, which again, it's just such a meta critique of Twitter. Like it makes all of this stuff impossible. He met with Tim Cook, resolved their differences, and that's everything that played out this week, basically.
Also ironic that Elon Musk would take what maybe was an automated message, and because today, for instance, or this week, you've had a whole bunch of kind of liberals and leftists who had their accounts suspended. It created all this conspiracy theorizing about whether there was some political agenda behind it. It looks like there was a kind of a bot purge, and they just got swept up in it, like Dean Baker. It's like a progressive economist.
The amount of time
account suspended.
The amount of times people have pitched me stories, and this is from the right, on like being shadow banned, or it's just like an algorithmic accident.
But
and it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
It seems like that's basically what happened to Twitter and Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Like, ignore that email, man. You're not getting kicked off of the App Store. They should still be busted up and regulated, though.
Yeah, absolutely they should.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.